The refrigerator door stayed open longer than it should have. Thora Vance stood barefoot on cold linoleum, staring at nothing. A half jar of pickles, a bottle of mustard with the cap missing, and a carton of milk 3 days past expired. Her hand trembled on the door handle. Behind her, 6-year-old Embry sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs, trying to be brave. 9-year-old Cassian wasn't trying. He just stared at his mother's back with eyes too old for his face. If you've ever stood in a place where silence feels heavier than shouting, then you already know where this story begins. And if you haven't, stay close. Because sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with weapons. "Mum?" Thora closed the door, turned, smiled the way nurses smile when everything's broken inside. "Breakfast is coming, baby." Embry nodded like she believed it. Cassian didn't move. The notification sound on her phone made her chest tighten. Another automated message from the landlord's office. Final notice in all caps. Rent was due 4 days ago. The late fee had already doubled. And the insurance company was still processing Deacon's death benefit, which meant another 6 weeks minimum before she'd see a cent. She'd sold the TV last week. The wedding china 2 days ago. There was nothing left to pawn except her nursing textbooks, and she'd need those if she ever got back on her feet. The knock at the door came soft, almost apologetic. Thora opened it to find Mrs. Kelton from 3B holding a Tupperware container. The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I made extra casserole last night," she said. "Thought maybe—" She trailed off. They both knew what this was. "Thank you," Thora whispered, taking the container. It was still warm. Mrs. Kelton squeezed her hand. "If there's anything else, we're fine." The lie tasted metallic. Mrs. Kelton hesitated, nodded, and disappeared down the hallway. Thora closed the door, leaned against it, and let herself take one shaking breath before turning back to her children with the smile still intact. "Lunch is served." She divided the casserole into 3 plates, gave the kids the bigger portions, ate 4 bites herself and pretended she was full. Cassian noticed. He always noticed. After they ate, she sent them to their room to play. Then she sat at the kitchen table with her phone and stared at numbers that didn't add up. 47 cents in her account. Rent was $1,200. The gas bill was overdue, and tomorrow was trash day, which meant the eviction notice would be posted on her door for the whole building to see. She'd been a combat nurse in Kandahar. She'd held soldiers together with gauze and prayer. She'd survived rocket fire and worked 20-hour shifts in 120-degree heat. But she couldn't feed her kids. The shame was a living thing crawling under her skin. Her phone buzzed. Another creditor. She didn't answer. What she didn't see was the message that had been sent 12 hours earlier, sent not to her, but to a clubhouse in Billings, Montana, a message that included 3 words and a photo: Deacon's widow, starving. And what she didn't hear, not yet, was the sound of 124 motorcycles starting their engines in the dark. By 4 a.m., a convoy was already rolling south on Highway 89. The man leading them hadn't slept. His name was Gideon Cross, 53 years old, scar tissue across his knuckles, and a memory burned into his skull from 2011. A field medic named Deacon Vance, dragging him out of an IED crater while bullets tore the air apart. Deacon had saved his life, and now Deacon's family was going hungry. Gideon didn't believe in coincidences. He believed in debts, and this one was 14 years overdue. The sound came first, low, distant, like rolling thunder trapped under asphalt. Thora woke to it, not the soft hum of morning traffic, but something deeper, something that made the windows vibrate. She sat up in bed, confused, heart pounding for no reason she could name. The bedside clock read 6:47 a.m. The kids were still asleep. She crossed to the window, pulled the curtain aside, and froze. The parking lot below was filling with motorcycles, not a handful, not a dozen, Dozens. They rolled in like a slow tide. Harleys, Indians, custom choppers with chrome that caught the dawn light like knives, leather vests, patches. The unmistakable insignia of the Hells Angels stitched across broad backs. Men and women with weathered faces and tattoos that told stories in ink. Thora's breath caught. They weren't stopping. They were arriving. One rider at the front, tall, broad-shouldered, grey beard braided down his chest, killed his engine, dismounted, looked up at her second-floor window like he knew exactly where she was standing. Then he raised one hand, not a wave, a signal. The engines cut. 124 motorcycles went silent at once. The quiet was louder than the rumble. Thora stumbled back from the window, her pulse hammered. This didn't make sense. She didn't know these people, didn't know why they were here, and the part of her brain still wired for survival was screaming danger. But then she heard voices, not shouting, not threatening, laughing. She looked again. The bikers were unloading, not weapons, groceries, bags and boxes, from the backs of bikes and the trunks of chase trucks pulling up behind them. One woman hauled out a crate of fresh vegetables. A man carried a 20-pound bag of rice on one shoulder like it weighed nothing. Another held a case of diapers, even though Thora's kids were long past that stage. Someone knocked on her door. Thora turned. Cassian and Embry stood in the hallway, wide-eyed. "Mom?" Cassian whispered. "Who are they?" "I don't know." She crossed to the door, hand on the knob, hesitated. Another knock, softer this time. "Mom." A man's voice, deep, respectful. "My name's Gideon Cross. I knew your husband." Thora's hand froze. "I'd like to talk, just talk, no trouble, I swear it." She opened the door a crack. The man standing there looked like a wall built of scars and regret, but his eyes were kind. And when he spoke again, his voice broke just slightly. "Deacon saved my life in Kandahar. I heard you needed help." Thora's throat closed. Tears burned behind her eyes. "I don't—" She couldn't finish. Gideon nodded like he understood. "You don't need to say anything, ma'am. Just let us do this, please." Behind him, the bikers were already carrying bags toward the building. One woman, silver-haired, leather vest, over a faded Metallica shirt, smiled up at Thora's window and gave a small salute. Thora looked at Gideon, at the convoy behind him, at the impossible kindness being unloaded onto cracked pavement. "Why?" she whispered. "Because Deacon would have done the same for any of us." Gideon's jaw tightened. "And because family isn't just blood, ma'am. It's the promise you keep when the world forgets." They came in waves, not loud, not invasive, just steady, respectful, like they'd done this before. The first woman through Thora's door was named Rook, late 50s, silver rings on every finger, and a scar running from her temple to her jawline. She carried 2 bags of groceries and set them on the counter without asking permission. "You got kids, yeah?" Rook said. "What do they like?" Thora stood frozen in her own kitchen. Mac and cheese, chicken nuggets, PB&J, all of it," Thora whispered. Rook nodded, pulled out her phone. "Heard that, Vince? Load up on the kids' stuff." Outside, a man with a shaved head and a prosthetic left arm gave a thumbs up and headed back to the trucks. Cassian and Embry peeked around the corner. Embry's eyes were enormous. Rook crouched down to their level. "Hey, little warriors, you hungry?" Embry nodded. Cassian stayed guarded. "Good, 'cause we brought enough food to feed a small army." Rook glanced at Thora. "Your mom's a hero, you know that? Combat nurse, saved lives, just like your dad." Cassian's face flickered. "You knew our dad. Not me, kid. But Gideon did. And when Gideon says someone's worth riding for, we ride." More bikers filed in. Not all at once, just enough to fill the small apartment without crowding it. They worked in silence, unloading bags, stacking cans in the cupboards, filling the refrigerator until it looked like something from a commercial. One man, tattooed forearms, wedding band, Gentle hands knelt to organize the pantry like he'd done it 1,000 times. Thora's voice finally found her. "This is too much." Gideon, standing near the door, shook his head. "It's not enough." He pulled an envelope from his vest, thick, heavy, held it out. "This covers 3 months' rent, paid direct to the landlord this morning. Utilities too." Thora stared at the envelope like it was a grenade. "I can't—" "You can." Gideon's voice was firm but not harsh. "And you will. Because your husband carried me out of hell when I had shrapnel in my spine and my squad was dead. He didn't ask if I could pay him back. He just did it." Tears spilled down Thora's face. She tried to wipe them away. Failed. "I don't even know how to—" "You don't have to." Gideon set the envelope on the table. "You just have to let us be family, that's all." Embry tugged on Rook's sleeve. "Are you angels?" Rook's laugh was rough and warm. "Hell no, sweetheart. We're just people who remember what it's like to need help. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. By noon, the entire building knew. Mrs. Kelton from 3B stood on her balcony watching the convoy with her hand over her mouth. The couple in 1A filmed everything on their phones. And the landlord, Gerald Fisk, 52, cheap suit, cheaper morals, arrived at 12:30 with a smirk that died the moment he saw the bikes. He parked his sedan 3 spaces away, stepped out slowly, counted the motorcycles like he was calculating odds. Gideon watched him from across the lot, didn't move, just leaned against his bike and waited. Fisk approached, tried to look confident, failed. "What's all this?" "Community support," Gideon said. His voice was flat, neutral, dangerous in its calm. "For who?" "Thora Vance, 2C. Fisk's jaw tightened. "She's 3 weeks behind on rent." "Not anymore." Gideon pulled a receipt from his pocket, handed it over. "Paid in full, 3 months advance, utilities included." Fisk stared at the paper. His face turned red. "You can't just what?" Gideon's tone didn't change. "Pay a tenant's rent? Pretty sure that's legal, Gerald." The use of his first name made Fisk flinch. "She signed a lease. There are rules, and she's following them." Gideon straightened. He was 6 inches taller than Fisk and twice as broad. "Rent's paid. Lease is valid. She's not going anywhere." Fisk's eyes darted to the other bikers. They weren't threatening. They were just there, a wall of leather and ink and silent promises. "This is intimidation," Fisk said. His voice cracked. "This is family," Gideon corrected, "and family takes care of its own." Fisk opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the receipt again like it might burst into flames. "If she causes any trouble, she won't." Gideon's voice dropped lower. "But if you do, if you harass her, if you try to evict her on some bullshit technicality, if you so much as look at her wrong, you'll see us again. And next time, we won't be bringing groceries." It wasn't a threat, it was a statement of fact. Fisk stumbled back, got in his car, drove away fast enough to leave tire marks. Rook appeared at Gideon's elbow. "Think he got the message?" "He got it." "Good." She lit a cigarette. "Prick's been squeezing tenants for years. About time someone squeezed back." Gideon watched the sedan disappear around the corner. "Deacon would have done worse. Deacon would have hospitalized him." "Exactly." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Rook nodded toward the apartment. "She's crying up there, happy crying, the kind that hurts. I know. You gonna tell her?" "Tell her what?" "That you've been sending anonymous money to veteran families for 6 years, that this isn't the first time, that you're not doing this just for Deacon." Gideon's jaw tightened. "Doesn't matter why. It does to her. Then she can think it's about Deacon. That's easier." Rook studied him. "You're a terrible liar, Gid." "Good thing I don't lie, then." She smiled, took a drag. You're a better man than you think you are. I'm a man who pays his debts, that's all." But they both knew it was more than that. It always had been. The bikers didn't leave, not all of them. Most of the convoy rolled out by evening, heading back to Billings or Missoula or wherever home was. But 15 stayed. They set up a perimeter in the parking lot, not aggressive, just present. A quiet deterrent to anyone who might think Thora Vance was easy prey, now that her husband was gone. Gideon stayed too. He sat on the curb near his bike, helmet on the seat beside him, watching the sun drop behind the mountains. The air smelled like pine and gasoline. Somewhere a dog barked, kids played in the courtyard, normal sounds, safe sounds. The door to 2C opened. Cassian stepped out. The boy was small for 9, thin, dark hair like his father's, eyes that had seen too much grief too fast. He walked down the steps slowly, stopped a few feet from Gideon. "My mom's asleep," Cassian said. "She cried for an hour. Then she fell asleep on the couch." Gideon nodded. "Crying's good, means she's letting it out." Cassian didn't sit, just stood there, hands in his pockets, staring at the bike. "That's a 1978 shovelhead," he said finally. Gideon raised an eyebrow. "You know bikes." "My dad taught me before." "Before what?" "Before he died." The words hung in the air. Gideon didn't flinch, didn't offer empty comfort. "Your dad knew bikes," he said instead. "Good ones too. We used to argue about carburetors." Cassian looked up. "You really knew him?" "Yeah. He saved my life." "How?" Gideon considered the question, considered the kid, decided he deserved the truth. "I stepped on an IED in Kandahar, 2011. My squad was dead. I had metal in my spine and my legs didn't work. Your dad was the field medic. He dragged me 200 yards under fire, patched me up and carried me to the evac chopper. I shouldn't have made it. But he didn't quit." Cassian processed this. "Did it hurt?" "More than anything. Do you still hurt? Every day?" The boy nodded like that made sense. "My mom says Dad was a hero." "He was. But heroes aren't supposed to die in car accidents," Cassian said. His voice cracked. "They're supposed to die saving people, not just randomly." Gideon's chest tightened. He'd thought the same thing when he'd heard. Deacon Vance, who'd survived firefights and IEDs and the worst Afghanistan could throw at him, taken out by a drunk driver 2 blocks from home. "You're right," Gideon said quietly. "It's not fair. So why'd you come? Why'd all these people come?" "Because your dad would have done it for us, and because you don't abandon family." "But we're not your family." "Yes, you are." Gideon's voice was firm. "Blood doesn't make family, kid. Loyalty does. Your dad was loyal to me when I needed him. Now I'm loyal to you." Cassian stared at him. Then slowly, he sat down on the curb. They sat in silence for a long time. The sun finished setting. Stars emerged. Finally, Cassian spoke. "Can you teach me?" "Teach you what?" "How to be loyal like that. How to be someone people can count on." Gideon looked at the kid, saw Deacon's eyes staring back at him. "You already are, Cassian. You've been taking care of your mom and sister for weeks. That's loyalty. That's family. It doesn't feel like enough." "It never does," Gideon said, "but you keep doing it anyway. That's what makes it enough." Cassian nodded, wiped his eyes quickly, stood. "Thanks," he said, "for the food, and the rent, and everything." "Anytime, kid." Cassian started toward the stairs, stopped, looked back. "Mr. Cross?" "Yeah?" "Do you think my dad's proud?" "Wherever he is?" Gideon's throat closed. He swallowed hard. "I think your dad's watching right now, and I think he's never been prouder." Cassian smiled. Small, real. Then he went inside. Gideon sat alone on the curb and let himself cry, where no one could see. The trouble came on day 3, not from the landlord, from someone uglier. His name was Kyle Brenner, 37, local meth dealer, and the kind of predator who circled widows like sharks circle blood. He'd noticed Thora weeks ago, noticed she was alone, vulnerable. He'd been working up to his move when the bikers showed up. Now he was pissed. He rolled into the parking lot at 9 p.m. in a jacked-up Ford with underglow lights and a stereo that made the ground shake. 2 guys with him, both rail-thin, both twitchy. Brenner killed the engine, stepped out, scanned the lot. The bikers were still there. Fewer now, just 8. But that was 8 more than Brenner wanted to deal with. He lit a cigarette, tried to look unbothered. Gideon was sitting on his bike 20 feet away, didn't move, just watched. Brenner walked toward 2C's stairwell, stopped at the bottom step, looked up at Thora's window. "Thora," he called, loud enough to carry. "Come on down, let's talk." The door opened. Not Thora. Rook. She descended slowly, stopped 3 steps from the bottom, looked down at Brenner like he was something she'd scraped off her boot. "She's not interested," Rook said. "I wasn't talking to you, Grandma." Rook's smile was all teeth. "You are now." Brenner's friends shifted. One touched the waistband of his jeans. The motion didn't go unnoticed. Gideon stood. Boots crunched gravel. The other bikers emerged from the shadows. Vince with his prosthetic arm. A woman named Delia with a scar across her throat. 4 others whose names Brenner didn't know. They formed a semicircle, not aggressive, just there. Brenner's confidence wobbled. "This is harassment," he said. "No," Gideon said quietly. "This is protection. There's a difference. I got rights. I can talk to whoever I want. And she has the right to say no." Gideon's voice stayed level, calm, which made it more terrifying. "She said no, so you leave." Brenner's jaw clenched. "You don't own this place. Neither do you. I know people, important people." "So do I." Gideon took a single step forward. "And mine are meaner than yours." The 2 sides stared at each other. The air tasted like gasoline and violence. Then Brenner's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His face went pale. Whatever he read, it changed everything. He backed toward his truck. "This ain't over." "Yes, it is," Rook said. "Drive safe, Kyle." The use of his name, the fact that they knew who he was, made Brenner stumble. He got in his truck, peeled out. The underglow lights disappeared into the dark. Vince exhaled. "Think he'll be back?" "No," Gideon said. "How do you know?" Gideon held up his phone. "Because I just sent his photo and plate number to a judge who owes me a favor. By tomorrow morning, Brenner's going to have bigger problems than us." Rook laughed. "You're a vindictive bastard, Gid." "I'm thorough." They dispersed, returned to their posts. The night went quiet again. Upstairs, Thora stood at her window. She'd seen everything, heard everything, and for the first time in 6 weeks, she felt safe. If you enjoyed this story so far, please leave a like and share with those who need to hear it. Every like helps us reach more people who need these reminders. Thora found the letter on the 4th morning. It was slipped under her door. Plain envelope, no return address. Just her name in handwriting she didn't recognize. She opened it carefully. Inside, a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The photo showed 2 soldiers in desert camo. One was Deacon, 24 years old, grinning despite the dust and heat. The other was Gideon, younger, less scarred, but with the same steady eyes. The letter was short. "Mrs. Vance, your husband saved my life in Afghanistan. I was bleeding out in a crater, and he refused to leave me. He carried me 200 yards while people were shooting at us. The medics said I shouldn't have survived the trip, but Deacon wouldn't let me quit. I never got to thank him properly. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm sorry you're going through this, and I'm sorry the world took him from you before he got to see his kids grow up. But I want you to know something. Deacon talked about you all the time. He showed everyone photos. He said you were the strongest person he'd ever met, that you'd survived things that would break most people, and you kept going anyway. He was right. I know you feel alone. I know this is hard, but you're not alone anymore. You've got 124 people who will show up whenever you need us. Not because we pity you, because you're family, and family doesn't abandon family. If you need anything at all, you call me. Day or night, I don't care what it is. Deacon gave me a second chance at life. Let me give you and your kids the same. Gideon Cross. Beneath the signature, a phone number. Thora read the letter 3 times, held the photograph like it was sacred, cried until she had nothing left. Then she folded the letter carefully, placed it in a drawer, and whispered 2 words into the empty apartment. Thank you. The bikers stayed a week. Not all of them, not all at once, but there was always someone there, a rotating watch that turned the parking lot into something between a sanctuary and a fortress. Gideon coordinated it like a military operation, which made sense given that most of them had served. Shifts changed at dawn and dusk. No one left until their replacement arrived. Vince took the first repair. He showed up on day 4 with a toolbox older than Cassian and knelt under Thora's kitchen sink like he'd done it 1,000 times before. The faucet had been dripping for 3 months, a slow, maddening percussion that Thora had learned to ignore because calling a plumber cost money she didn't have. "This'll take 20 minutes, Vince said, his prosthetic arm moving with practiced efficiency. "Got some corrosion on the valve seat. Easy fix." Cassian sat cross-legged on the floor, watching. "How'd you lose your arm?" "Cassian!" Thora's voice was sharp with embarrassment, but Vince just laughed. "It's fine, Mom. Kid's curious." He looked at Cassian. "Firefight in Fallujah, 2007. AD took it off below the elbow. Does it hurt?" "Sometimes, phantom pain. Feels like it's still there even though it's not." Vince tightened a bolt. "But I got lucky. Could have been worse. Your dad saw worse." "Did you know my dad?" "Nah, but Gideon did. And Gideon says your dad was solid. That's good enough for me." He tested the faucet. Water flowed clean. No drip. "There we go. Good as new." Cassian touched the metal fixture like it was miraculous. "Thank you." "Any time, little man." Delia arrived on day 5 with a locksmith kit and a scar across her throat that she never explained. She replaced the broken window lock in the kid's bedroom, the one that had kept Thora awake at night, imagining worst-case scenarios. "This lock's garbage," Delia said, her voice raspy and low. "Wouldn't stop a determined raccoon, let alone a person." She installed a heavy-duty deadbolt, tested it 3 times. "Now you're secure." Thora watched from the doorway. "How much do I owe you?" "Nothing, but—" Delia turned. Her eyes were grey and hard and kind all at once. "Your husband was military. You were a combat nurse. That means you've already paid more than most people ever will." She packed her tools. "Consider this a refund." Rook became the kid's favorite. She showed up every afternoon with a worn leather satchel full of surprises. Origami paper, a harmonica, a deck of cards so old the faces were barely visible. She taught Embry how to braid hair, her thick fingers surprisingly gentle as they wove strands together. "You got good hair, kiddo," Rook said. "Thick, strong, like your mama's." Embry beamed. "Will you teach me a French braid?" "Sure. But first you gotta learn the basic 3-strand. Patience, warrior. Everything worth doing takes time." She helped Cassian with his homework too, long division that had been defeating him for weeks. She explained it using motorcycle parts. "Think of it like gear ratios," she said, sketching on the back of an envelope. "You got a big number and a small number, and you're figuring out how many times the small one fits into the big one. Same principle." Cassian's face lit up. "Oh, that makes sense. Math always makes sense once you find the right angle." Rook ruffled his hair. You're smart, kid. Don't let anyone tell you different. Word spread through the building like wildfire. Mrs. Kelton from 3B was the first neighbor to approach. She knocked on Thora's door at noon on day 6, holding a slow cooker and a grocery bag. "I heard what these folks did for you," she said. "And I thought maybe I could help too. Teach you some easy meals, stretch your dollar." Thora's eyes burned. "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." Mrs. Kelton set the slow cooker on the counter. "I was a single mum once, 20 years ago. No bikers came for me, but the church ladies did. And they taught me that casseroles and slow cooker meals can save your life when you're drowning." They spent 2 hours making freezer meals, lasagna, chili, chicken stew. Mrs. Kelton wrote instructions on index cards in neat handwriting. "You make a big batch on Sunday," she explained. "Portion it out, freeze it. Then on Tuesday, when you're exhausted, you just heat it up. No thinking required." This is incredible," Thora whispered. "This is community." Mrs. Kelton squeezed her hand. "And you're part of it now." The couple in 1A, Marcus and Jennifer, both teachers, offered to babysit. "We're home by 4 every day," Jennifer said. "If you ever need to run errands or just need a break, bring them down. We've got games and snacks." The mechanic came on day 7. His name was Lou Pritchard, 63, Navy vet, hands stained with 40 years of engine grease. He knocked on Thora's door holding a clipboard. "Your Civic's got a bad alternator," he said without preamble. "Saw it in the lot, recognized the symptoms." "I know, I haven't had time to—" "I'll fix it. No charge." Thora blinked. "What?" "Heard your military family. Heard your husband died. Heard these bikers showed up to help." Lou shrugged. "Figured I'd pitch in. Bring your keys down tomorrow. I'll have it done by Wednesday." "I can't ask you to—" "You didn't ask. I'm offering." His voice softened. "My son died in Helmand Province, 2013, Marines. Every time I help a military family, I pretend I'm helping him. Stupid maybe, but it makes me feel useful." Thora's throat closed. "What was his name?" "Daniel." "Thank you, Lou, for Daniel, and for this." He nodded gruffly, walked away before emotion could crack his voice. By the end of the week, the entire apartment complex had transformed, not physically. The paint was still chipped, the parking lot still cracked, but spiritually. People who'd lived side by side for years without speaking now waved in the hallways. Neighbors swapped phone numbers. A sense of collective responsibility bloomed where apathy had been. The bikers had done more than help Thora. They'd reminded an entire community what it meant to care. On the 7th evening, Gideon found Thora on the balcony. The sun was setting, gold and crimson bleeding across the Montana sky. She was holding a mug of tea, staring at nothing. "We're heading out tomorrow," Gideon said quietly. Thora nodded. She'd known this was coming. "But we're not disappearing." He handed her a laminated card with phone numbers and names. East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. "If you need anything at all, you call one of these numbers. Someone will answer. Someone will come." "I don't know how to repay you," Thora said. Her voice was raw. "You don't." Gideon leaned against the railing. "You just take care of those kids. You heal. You rebuild. That's all the payment anyone needs." "Deacon would have loved this," she whispered. "He always said the best people wore leather, not suits." Gideon smiled, a real smile, not the careful mask he usually wore. He wasn't wrong. Suits lie for a living. We just ride. They stood in silence, watching the sun disappear. "Can I ask you something?" Thora said. "Anything." "Why do you do this? Not just for me, for everyone. Rook told me you've been helping veteran families for years." Gideon's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, "I came home in 2011 with a spine full of metal and a head full of ghosts. No family, no job, no purpose. I was 2 weeks away from eating a bullet when a bunch of bikers found me drunk in a parking lot. They didn't lecture me, didn't pity me. They just said, "You ride with us now." And they gave me a reason to wake up. His voice dropped. "Your husband gave me my life back in Afghanistan. Those bikers gave me my life back in America. Now I do the same for others. It's not charity. It's survival. We save each other. That's how it works." Thora reached over, squeezed his hand. "Thank you for surviving." Gideon looked at her, this woman who'd held soldiers together in combat zones, who'd buried her husband and kept her children fed, who'd faced eviction with the same steel she'd faced rocket fire. "Thank you for the same," he said. That night, the bikers held a vigil. They didn't call it that, didn't announce it or make a ceremony of it. They just gathered in the parking lot as the stars emerged, engines silent, standing in a loose circle. Someone brought a portable speaker. Another had a battery-powered camping light. They played taps at low volume, the haunting melody drifting through the quiet complex. Cassian and Embry stood with their mother on the balcony. Embry cried softly. Cassian held her hand, his face solemn and old. When the song ended, Gideon looked up, raised his hand to his temple, saluted. One by one, the other bikers did the same. Thora saluted back. Her hand trembled, tears streaked her face. And somewhere in the space between memory and faith, she felt Deacon standing beside her, proud of his family, proud of his brothers, proud that the promise he'd made in a desert crater 14 years ago had rippled forward into this moment. Family didn't end with death. It just changed shape. 3 months later, Thora Vance stood in the parking lot at sunrise, watching frost glitter on windshields. The apartment was warm. The refrigerator was full, not charity full, but grocery store normal full, the kind of full that came from a steady paycheck and careful budgeting. Her new job at the VA hospital had started 8 weeks ago, night shift supervisor, good pay, better benefits. And every time she helped a veteran navigate the bureaucracy, she thought of Deacon, thought of the men and women who'd fought beside him. Thought of the debt she could never fully repay, but would spend her life trying to honor. The rent was paid 3 months ahead, Gideon's envelope still tucked in her desk drawer like a talisman. She'd cried when she opened it that first morning, cried again when she realized he'd included an extra $2,000 with a note that said simply, "For emergencies." Don't argue. Her life wasn't fixed. Grief didn't work that way. Some mornings she still woke up reaching for Deacon's side of the bed, her hand finding cold sheets and crushing reality. Some nights the kid still asked when Dad was coming home, forgetting for a heartbeat that he never would. The wound was still there, would always be there, but it had scabbed over. She could breathe again, function, plan for tomorrow without drowning in yesterday. Cassian had started sleeping through the night. Embry's nightmares had faded. They laughed again, played again. They were healing. Her phone buzzed, a text from Gideon. "How are you holding up?" She smiled, typed back, "We're good. Really good. Thank you." His response came fast. "Never thank family." The word family settled into her chest like a warm stone. Because that's what they were now. Not strangers who'd swooped in and disappeared. Not a one-time charity case filed away and forgotten. Family. The kind you choose, the kind that checks in. The kind that remembers your kids' birthdays and sends packages with stuffed animals and books. The kind that answers at 2 a.m. when you're having a panic attack and can't remember how to breathe. Rook called every Sunday. Their conversations wandered. Recipes, bike maintenance, Embry's latest drawing, Cassian's obsession with rebuilding old engines. Sometimes they didn't talk about anything important. Sometimes they sat on the phone in comfortable silence while Rook worked on her bike and Thora folded laundry. "You ever think about getting a bike?" Rook had asked last week. "Me? On a motorcycle? Why not? You're tougher than half the riders I know." Thora laughed. "Maybe someday, when the kids are older. I'll teach you. First lesson's free, after that you owe me beer." Vince sent postcards from the road, Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado. Short messages. Thought of you when I fixed a sink today. Reminded me why I do this. Another. Saw a kid who looked like Cassian. Gave him my spare socket wrench. Pass it forward. Delia didn't text much, but once a month a package arrived. Self-defense keychains, pepper spray, a pocket knife with a note, just in case. Stay sharp. The community had changed, too. Mrs. Kelton hosted a monthly potluck in the courtyard. Marcus and Jennifer babysat every Thursday, so Thora could have a night to herself. Sometimes she went to the gym, sometimes she just drove to the lake and sat in silence, letting her mind rest. Lou Pritchard had become an unofficial grandfather to her kids. He taught Cassian how to change oil, how to read an engine's health by sound alone. He took Embry to car shows and let her sit in the driver's seat of a 1967 Mustang, her hands on the wheel, while she made vrooming noises and dreamed of someday racing. The landlord, Gerald Fisk, had become suddenly accommodating. The broken stairwell railing got fixed, the parking lot lights were repaired. When Thora's garbage disposal died, a repairman showed up the same day. She suspected Gideon had made a phone call. She didn't ask. Kyle Brenner, the dealer who'd tried to intimidate her, had been arrested 2 weeks after the confrontation. Charges included possession, with intent to distribute, harassment and outstanding warrants in 3 counties. Thora had read about it in the local paper. She didn't feel victorious, just relieved. Cassian ran up the stairs now, breathless and bright-eyed. "Mom, Embry found a caterpillar. Can we keep it?" Thora laughed. The sound surprised her every time, like relearning a language she'd thought she'd forgotten. "Absolutely not. But Mom, it's so cool, it's fuzzy, and it crawls really fast, and no bugs in the house, that's the rule." Cassian groaned dramatically. "You never let us have anything fun. I let you have breakfast. That's fun." He rolled his eyes, ran back down the stairs toward Embry, who was crouched near the flower bed with the caterpillar inching across her palm. Thora watched them, watched the morning light catch Embry's hair, watched Cassian carefully transfer the caterpillar to a leaf, because even at 9 years old, he was gentle with fragile things. Her phone buzzed again. This time, Rook. "Heard you got promoted to day shift supervisor. About damn time they recognized what you're worth." Thora blinked. She hadn't told anyone yet. The offer had come through yesterday. She typed back, "How did you know? We keep tabs. We're family. That's what we do." Thora's eyes stung. She looked at the sky, blue and endless and beautiful, and whispered to the wind, "I hope you can see this, Deacon. I hope you know they came. I hope you're proud." Somewhere in the space between memory and faith, she felt an answer. Not words, just a presence, the sense of being seen, being known, being loved across the veil between worlds. "I am. I always was. I always will be." She closed her eyes. Let the moment wash over her. Grief and gratitude tangled together, inseparable, essential, the price and proof of love that survives death. When she opened her eyes, Cassian was staring up at her. "You okay, Mom?" She smiled. "Yeah, baby, I'm okay. Were you talking to Dad?" The question should have hurt. Instead, it felt right. Natural, like breathing. "Yeah, I was." "Does he answer?" Thora crouched down, pulled her son close. "Sometimes, in his own way." Cassian nodded against her shoulder. "I miss him." "Me too. But we're gonna be okay, right?" Thora thought about the bikers who'd shown up at dawn with groceries and rent money, thought about the neighbors who'd become friends, thought about the phone numbers laminated on a card in her wallet, 124 people she could call at any hour, for any reason, and they'd come. She thought about chosen family, about loyalty that transcends blood, about promises kept across years and miles, and even death. "Yeah, Cass, we're gonna be okay. Because we have each other. Because we have each other. And because we're not alone." Cassian pulled back, looked at her with Deacon's eyes. "The bikers? The bikers, the neighbors, all of it. We've got people." That's good, Cassian said seriously. Dad would like that. He would, Embry called from below. Cassian, come look, the caterpillar's making a cocoon. Cassian kissed Thora's cheek, ran down the stairs. Thora stood on the balcony and watched her children explore their small corner of the world, watched the complex wake up, doors opening, voices calling, the ordinary magic of another day beginning. Her phone buzzed one more time. Gideon, riding through Montana next month. Mind if we stop by? She typed back immediately, you better stop by. The kids would never forgive you if you didn't. See you then. Stay strong, warrior. Always. She pocketed her phone, looked at the parking lot where 124 motorcycles had once stood. The asphalt was empty now, but she could still hear the rumble of engines, could still see Gideon's salute, could still feel the moment her life had pivoted from free fall to solid ground. Family isn't just blood, Deacon had said once, drunk on their anniversary, talking about his buddies in Afghanistan. Family is who shows up when everything's burning. He'd been right, and now she understood what he'd meant, understood why he'd dragged Gideon out of that crater, why he'd spent his last tour writing letters to the families of fallen soldiers, why he'd believed so fiercely in the brotherhood forged under fire. Because some promises transcend death. Because loyalty isn't a transaction, it's a choice you make every single day. Because family, real family, chosen family, refuses to let you fall. Thora Vance had lost her husband, had faced hunger and eviction and the crushing weight of grief, had stood at the edge of the abyss and felt it pulling her down. But 124 people had shown up at dawn with groceries and rent money and a message louder than thunder. You're not alone. You never will be. We've got you. And that had made all the difference. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched you, please subscribe to the channel and share with someone who needs to hear it. Stories like these remind us that family isn't just blood. It's the promise we keep when the world forgets. It's who shows up when everything's burning. It's the hand that reaches down when you're drowning. Until next time, ride safe and take care of your people. Because in the end, that's all that matters.